Hi there, this is Jennifer. I hope you're having a great day. Today I'm going to show you a technique I call negative space coloring. This is a great technique for getting a new look out of stamps you may already have. It's excellent for outline stamps. So instead of coloring inside the lines, I'm actually coloring outside of the lines only and leaving the images plain. It's a great way to kind of get a modern look on a card and a completely different look than if you colored the images themselves. I'll be showing you a couple ways to do this technique. Also, stay tuned to the end because I'm going to tell you about a fun coloring challenge I think you'll like. So let's get started. You can see around the colored image, the mat is a faux postage edge. I'm going to start with that so I know what size to cut my pieces to color inside of that. I'm using 2 sets of dies from Memory Box today, the postage squares layer set and the rectangle set. This creates a great postage edge, and I think it's fun to use this instead of a regular cut rectangular square as a mat for the colored piece because it adds a little bit of interest. So you can see the final piece here. Now I cut pieces of white cardstock that are slightly smaller than this, so I can stamp and color on them and then use this as a mat. Now it's time to do some stamping. I'm using this new stamp set from Altenew. You could use any outline stamps that you may have. I just thought these florals would be beautiful. I'm also going to use the Misti stamping tool to help me get good stamping. And you'll see I'm going to be doing 2 layers of stamping, so this tool is very helpful. However, if you do not have this tool, you can use just a regular acrylic block. So I have my postage mat ready. I'm going to set that aside for later, and I cut that white square to go perfectly in the inside. We're going to do our stamping on that white square. I use Neenah white cardstock because I'll be using copic markers here, but you could use whatever markers or coloring method you would like. Now here's the stamp I'm going to use. I'm kind of planning where I want it to stamp on that card. I'm not using the whole image, just part of it here. So I'm kind of planning this out, and then I'm going to put my white cardstock square into the Misti, and I'm going to put a little mark. I'm going to line it up with that grid line there on the bottom and the edge of the Misti and put a little mark so I know that next time I need to stamp this again, I can put the paper right there and it'll stamp perfectly. So I'm arranging my stamp right on the white piece of cardstock, and now I'm going to close the Misti door on it, and this will transfer the stamp over to the side so that we can start stamping. Again, if you have an acrylic block, you could just use that instead. I'm using this light gray ink from My Favorite Things. It's a hybrid ink, and it is copic friendly. It's super light because I don't really want this to show up much, and you'll see why in a moment. So I'm going to stamp this once, and I normally would just stamp it that one time, but so you can see the line better, make it a little bit darker, I'm going to double stamp it just so that you can see it better in the video. So I'm stamping it twice. Now you can see that image a bit better. Now I can add my colored background with copic markers. Now I'm going to do some embossing over this image, so don't worry if that light image doesn't look good when we add the color. I'll talk about that in a moment. First, I'm going to take my lightest color. I have 3 colors here. I'm going to take my lightest color and saturate the entire background. Put as much color down as you can onto the background only. Doesn't look so hot, but I promise it'll look better soon. Now I'm coming in with the medium color, the R22, and adding this towards the center. Because I've already put so much of that lighter color down, it really starts to blend on its own, so this doesn't take a whole lot of effort. Now, depending on how complex your outline image is, it might take a little bit of effort to color around it, but it's just like coloring inside the image. You're just doing it on the outside instead. This is a great project to take and go because you only need 3 markers to do it. Okay, so now I've got my light and my medium blended together. It's time to come in with the darker color. So I'm going to do the darker R22 on the bottom of this piece only, blending it with that medium color in the center. Now you could use any markers or watercolor that you want for this. You just want to make sure you keep your colors on the outside of the image. It's just something fun and different. Okay, so once I have this all blended, I'm going to go ahead and heat emboss this. I want this image to be heat embossed. However, I have found once that when I went with copic markers onto an image that has been heat embossed, I got a little bit of that embossing powder on my marker tip, and I don't want to ruin my copic markers. So this is why I do it. You can test. Maybe you could heat emboss in the beginning and then do your copic coloring around it, but I didn't want to take the risk. So after coloring it and heat setting it so it's just dry, I'm going to use my anti-static powder tool and cover the entire piece. Now I'm going to take that piece and put it right back into my Misti in the exact same location and stamp the image again, but this time with Versamark ink so that we can heat emboss it. If you don't have the Misti, you would just need to stamp all these layers on top of each other by looking through the clear block and just trying your best to line it up. Usually it's not that hard to do. Or you can use a different type of stamp positioner. Okay, so this is stamped with the clear sticky ink, Versamark ink. And now I can come in with some crazy gold glitter embossing powder and heat emboss this. And now we have that colorful background and we have a gold glitter embossed image. Another reason I didn't want to heat emboss and then color is that if the color gets on the heat embossing, it changes the color of the embossing powder because this is a permanent pen. So I find it best to do the embossing second. So now I'm going in with some color and filling in any areas that were still white around the image, and also add just a little bit of darker color right in the nooks and crannies, the corners of the image, just to make it pop a bit. Now, any color that got inside the lines, I'm going to kind of magically erase away by using a white gel pen over it. Nobody will ever know. I think this is such a fun way to get a different look out of a stamped image, and it's definitely easier because you're only using 3 colors to do the background. Now that I've finished this, I can go ahead and glue it into the center of that postage square, and I think it's a fun variation to have that postage edge on the mat of this piece. Before I show you a second way to do this technique, I want to show you a couple more examples using copics. On these, I used this stamp set from Altenew, these beautiful peonies. You can layer all these images on top of each other to get a beautiful layered image, or you can just use the outlines alone, which I did here. I silver heat embossed the peony, and then I put some bold color around it. On the left, I used 3 shades of copic marker, and on the right, I used 2 shades. So just a few variations for you. I like to do lots of cards while I have all my supplies out. While we're here, I just wanted to show you the sentiment that I used on this one. This is the Painted Greetings from Altenew. I really like this stamp set because it has a painted feel to it that goes great with lots of different techniques that are popular right now. And there are a lot of greetings in this stamp set. I'm going to go ahead and heat emboss this with that same silver glitter embossing powder from Wow that I used for the outline of the flower, so it matches perfectly. So in the examples I've showed you so far, I used copic markers to create a bold blended background. Another way to do this technique is with distress inks and an ink blending tool, and that's what I did on this card here. Now for this one, you need to cut a mask, which can take some more time, but a distress ink background is faster than the copic ink background. So here is some masking paper from Ink-A-Dink-A-Doo, and I'm just quickly stamping the rows that I want to use from that Altenew stamp set onto the masking paper. And now we're going to cut around the outside edge of this. It may take some time to cut this mask out, but you can save it with the stamp set and use it again in the future. So now I have a piece of white rectangle cardstock that is cut to fit inside one of the postage rectangles. I'm going to stamp the same rows with Versamark ink, and we're going to heat emboss this with that same gold glitter embossing powder. By the way, you can use any embossing powders you may have for this technique. I just like that the glitter adds a little bit of interest. After heat setting the embossing powder and putting the mask in place, I can now put my distress inks in the background. And I'm going to go from red to coral to yellow, as you see here. Now, normally I start with the center color. Ignore me here. I'm starting with the bottom color first. Pretend I didn't do that. I forgot. You want to start with the center color. This is the abandoned coral, and I'm going to use my ink blending tool to kind of put a blended background right in the center. And I'm going kind of farther down, closer to the edges than you think I normally would, because you want to overlap the colors. Now I'm coming in with the new candy apple red color and overlapping those. And at the top, I'm coming in with the fossilized amber and overlapping that with that coral color in the middle. The more you overlap the colors, the more blending you will get. So now I'm coming back in with the coral and blending a little bit farther out. And now we have a great bold background. We can remove the mask and make more if we wanted to. So there you have 2 ways to do these colorful backgrounds. Now before we go, I wanted to show you how to put these cards together and share another tip. I'm using some craft foam on the back of these pieces so that they'll be raised up off the background. So I'm using a white note card for the background, so I really think it makes a big difference to put this little bit of dimension behind it so it pops. I use the craft foam for the dimension so that it's nice and evenly raised. If you use some foam tape, it might get crushed in the mail. So I'm putting craft foam on the back of each of these pieces. Now for sentiment on some of them, I'm also using this Altenew stamp set. I like that you can build things up and there's some great unique sentiments. I'm using You Are a Blessing on these. And I wanted to make sure I stamped it straight. Here's a trick for you. I'm going to go ahead and put this little postage piece on the top of this white note card. I want to make sure I get it square. So I'm using my T ruler to kind of help me guide and make sure I'm getting it nice and square and straight. I decided that I wanted to make this card a little narrow. I don't know why, it just seemed to fit the square a little bit better. So I'm going to trim some of this side off here. And by the way, a T-ruler is one of the best tools you can have in your craft room, and it's only a few bucks. I'm going to use the T-ruler again to help me line up my stamped image underneath this. So I've got the T-ruler right up against the edge. I've got my sentiment that says "You are a blessing." I'm inking it up with Versamark ink, and I'm stamping right along the edge of the T-ruler, and that ensures that I've got it straight. Now I can go ahead and add my gold glitter embossing powder once again, and we have a sentiment perfectly straight and our postage piece perfectly straight. So that inexpensive T-ruler can really be helpful in getting things lined up. Now before we go, I just want to quickly show you all the cards we created. On this one, I did a copic background and actually added some Wink of Stella shimmer on top of it. I decided not to do that to the others, but it does add some more interest. This one was done with some distress ink also, the one on the left was. This was done with copic markers, as was the one on the right there. I tell you, I like to do a lot of cards at once. Copic markers again, and then on the right we have the distress ink that I just finished. This one was copic. A lot of ways you can do this. Try it with watercolor, try it with whatever color medium you're most comfortable with. I think it's really fun to color the background instead of the images to get a completely different look. Now before we go, I wanted to tell you about a fun coloring challenge that my friend Kathy Rakusin is doing. She's a dear friend of mine and unbelievably talented when it comes to coloring. She's doing a simple 30-day coloring challenge, and I will link to it, so be sure to check it out. It lasts through the month of February. It's really easy and a fun thing to get involved with. If you're interested in the products that I used today, I linked them below in my YouTube description, or you can click here on the top left to head over to my blog for a lot more information. In the middle are 3 other coloring videos you might like. The first one shows copic coloring with a white outline. The middle shows using coloring to make die cuts more lifelike, and the other is another fun copic background. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it, and I hope you'll return again soon.